superstar teacher and speaker, and that is Francoise Netter. So Francoise.
So I want to start today's talk, which is called Healing Trauma.
Mike. Use your mic.
My mic. See, I'm so used to not using a mic. See, and our AV guy walked in just as I didn't use the mic. Thank you.
If you can't hear, raise your hand too, because we
I often talk to the back of the room. I've been on many stages. So welcome everyone and happy Father's Day. And I think it's interesting that today's subject is healing trauma, activating joy. So I want to start with two quotes. One is a paraphrase from Naomi Judd. And she said that if we do not heal and transform trauma, we are destined to keep it going and to transmit it wherever we go. I also want to talk about a woman that I met at the last IANDS conference. Her name was Cherie Aimee. And without going into a lot of details about her NDE, she described that they said she was dead for 90 minutes, but she experienced that she was dead for 7 days. And during those 7 days, she was taken to different worlds. The first one was a sea world. And I thought, oh, my home, there's a sea world out there for me. I'm part mermaid and living in Colorado. And then for the next 7 days, she was taught. And one of the teachings which they said over and over to her was that we come to this planet to heal wounds. And if we do not heal a wound in a particular lifetime, we take that wound onward to all other lifetimes. And I was kind of blown away. She was a remarkable woman. Her skin glowed. She looked like not even a human being. So with that, having said that, I want to move on and talk about list 5 prongs to healing. And I'm going to move over here. The first prong, not 5 prongs, we're going to go into 4 steps of healing, but the first prong to trauma is physical. Another one is mental, emotional, sexual, and the new hot word is intergenerational. So I'll be speaking about all these as we go on, and I'm going to talk about the 4 steps to healing. The first, and I want to say one thing, this is my research. This is after doing decades and decades of this work. So somebody else might have a different process, but I'm just sharing my experience and the work I've done with over 1,000 sexual abuse survivors and lots of PTSD humans who've survived it. So the first is the event, the trauma. It could be from your childhood, just coming to Earth. It could be from a day ago. It could be in the past, and it could be from your lineage that may or may not be conscious. The second one is the one we tend to avoid the most, and that is we need to go back and feel the beliefs, emotions, and thought forms of the trauma without reactivating the trauma. And that's why so many people don't want to go into those feelings. But it's very, very important. And who was it? It was, I think, John Gray who said, If you do not feel, you cannot heal. The third step is very much married to the second, and that one is transformation and alchemy. So we don't feel it to activate it, we feel it to let it go, to own it consciously and then transmute it. And from that process, we come into the fourth and the goal. And that is moving into what I call resilience. And to me, the definition of resiliency is not just surviving trauma, but being able to thrive and to then contribute to the world, whether it's one person or thousands, through your transformation. And that's where joy comes in. So these steps are really interesting in that they're not linear. You know, so many of us who've done healing work, we're going, well, darn it, I thought I already was done with that one. Why is it showing up right here? And it's because we're not taught this, but everything's a spiral. So you might have healed completely and then it comes back up 30, 40, 50 years later for you to transform it even more. So I want to talk now a little bit about my journey so that it can inspire your own path. So I was born in Europe and I came to the United States when I was 3, and I was born to all Holocaust survivors. Now, I had no idea what that meant. And at the age of 5, Jackie was right, I knew who I was and why I came into the planet. I knew that I came here to serve through my creativity. And then my childhood hit the fan, and I forgot a lot. However, at the age of 7, my father decided that he hated America, and he had bought a house in the south of France and was going to move my whole family there. And my mother decided that she was not going to follow, and I did not see my father again until I was an adult. At the age of 9, I began to dream things that came true and realized, even though back then there was no word for empath and psychic and clairvoyant and all those things, but I was that, hypersensitive. And it was at that age that my mother met my stepfather, who was an Auschwitz Holocaust survivor, and became my greatest perpetrator and abuser. He abused me sexually and emotionally from the age of 9 to the age of 16. And my mother finally believed me at the age of 16 and threw him out. And why I'm telling you that, and I became self-supporting, is because it launched for me a very deep exploration of what allows some people to become completely broken by trauma, like my stepfather. The Nazis did everything that they wanted to do with him, which was to break his spirit. There was no one home. Of course, I didn't know that. It was only through a lot of recovery that I realized that. And he also, oh my goodness, I lost my place. Where am I? So he also emotionally abused me. And what allows people like my stepfather, who are broken by the trauma, and other people who become great and resilient no matter what trauma they've been through, and I will speak about them. So I really took my life to look at that and to really try to reach for a star that would allow me to move through, which I didn't even know at the time how it affected me. So at the age of 18, I got a full scholarship. Nobody in my family went to college. We never talk about it, but I did, because they were all taken out of Germany and Europe. And my mother right before I went to university in New York State, my mother got remarried and moved to Los Angeles. And I got really sick in my freshman year. I exhibited all these symptoms of a sexual abuse survivor. And so they moved me to LA, and then they said, you're going to Berkeley. And I went, nah, I'm not. And they went, yeah, you are. So I just started all over in Berkeley, and that changed my life. I was introduced, I had been doing yoga at 16, but I was introduced to yoga and meditation and all the metaphysical arts. And it was extraordinary. It really changed my life. And what I realized about that time is no matter what I have been through, and I've been through a lot, there was always this thread of spirit, always this thread of something greater than all the stuff we experience here. And there's greatness here too, but it's not easy. We weren't told that coming in, right? So I ended up being in Berkeley, and then I got very interested in everything spiritual. And I also, at 21, was given a gift to go back to Europe and to go to Israel. And it was in Israel that I saw my first modern dance company. And I decided that that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. So at 21, when most people stopped dancing, I became a professional dancer. And I found the field of dance therapy, and I thought, what a perfect marriage of being able to serve through my creativity. So the years went by, and I ended up getting my master's degree in dance and dance therapy in Oakland, California. And it was right about that time that I decided I had to get really serious about meditation. And I had tried about 5, 6, 7 different paths, from Buddhism to Vipassana yoga to all kinds of other meditation fields. And I found this incredible little meditation group in the Oakland Hills. And it was there at the same time that I got a correspondence course that everything started aligning synchronistically to an ashram in Oakland, which became my spiritual path and really allowed me to experience mystical experiences that are not like this. And it was an extraordinary, extraordinary time in my life. In fact, I had so many inner experiences that it was more exciting than anything out here in the world. And remind you, I was a performer and a teacher, so I loved being on stages, and yet my inner life just began to awaken. It was after that then as well, I went to and lived in Oakland, in an ashram in India, and I became a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, as well as a movement therapist and art therapist. And it wasn't until my 40th birthday that I went deeply, no matter how many psychiatrists I saw, I went deeply into recovery for really healing the sexual and emotional abuse. So it was a long spiraling path. So I did my work all over the Bay Area. I was really well known. I pioneered my work with movement with PTSD survivors, whether they were from Veterans Hospital. I was hired in veterans hospitals. I was hired to work with breast cancer survivors. I was hired, I worked in prisons and jails, and that was quite extraordinary. I have lots of stories about that, teaching meditation in the prisons and doing dance therapy in the prisons. And I worked in school systems, so lots and lots of work all over. And then in '99, I decided I needed the red earth, and I moved to Boulder. And it was about within the first few years that I realized that I also was carrying a tremendous amount of intergenerational trauma. My mother was killed in 2003 by being run down by a car. And she had a diary of what occurred to her in the war. And my aunt, who was still alive at the time, took the diary, it was all in French, and she translated it into English. And I found out things that I had no idea they went through. They were arrested. I knew they lived in a nunnery for a while. They went into hiding. All kinds of things happened to them. And what I didn't know was I was carrying that in my DNA. So many different things that I didn't understand were happening in my life because it was unconscious. So I'm going to say, stop for a moment and pause. The most important thing about healing is to bring things to consciousness. It appears to be scary, but it is very, very important. Guru Mai Chitvilasananda said, and I quote, "If everyone just would take care of their own stuff, the world would be a really great place to live." So, after that, I did my work in Boulder area, and in 2017, being a dancer and a gypsy, I decided I needed the ocean now. So I jumped off the cliff, sold my apartment condo in Boulder, and found my happy place in Coronado Island. It's an island off of San Diego, tropical and exquisite. And I lived there on and off from 2017 to 2019, and then also went to Nice to reclaim my childhood and say the buck stops here and heal the last parts of not having my father in my life and not growing up in Nice. So in 2019, I moved back here right before COVID, and then COVID hit. And everything in my life dissolved. And I don't know if you've ever gone through that, but it was like anything that was left over from the past. For me, it was the fear of getting sick, became magnified, and then an aloneness, an isolation at a level I had probably come in with. And those of us on a spiritual path, I really think that the greatest wound that we all have is that separation from home, from spirit, from the divine, from source energy, from all that is, however you want to call it. It has no limitations. And so many of us look for it everywhere here. So I went back. So I came back here in 2019, and there I felt so alone, so isolated, and so afraid of being sick. And why I'm talking about this is because for 3 years, my work dissolved, and I gave my power away to the appearance in the world. How many of us do that? Just to fit in, or to think that somebody else has the right answer for us. And that's not true. And so I gave everything away after having been independent all those years and deeply rooted in a spiritual and creative path of service. It was like I lost everything. And then in 2022, in 2021, I went back to Coronado, and in 2022, I went back for Thanksgiving. My niece was living in San Diego, and the energy was really weird. It had never been that weird there. And I didn't pay attention. The last night I was there was December 1st. I was leaving the next morning, back to Colorado. 2 friends here were picking me up at the airport. And I always worked out on the island, and I went everywhere on my bicycle, and my landlady gave me a bike, and so I had picked the last gardenia that I had found, and I lost it on the bike. And my niece was there at 8:30 at night with her foster dog, and she needed to walk it. And I said, fine, we'll walk the dog and I'll find my gardenia. So I lived there. It's an island. I stepped out on the street. There were no headlights, nothing. And out of nowhere, lights are beaming at me. And I look, and I start walking back, and I get hit. And unbelievably, I don't roll under the car. I roll over the car, and then I land on my feet being a dancer, and I noticed that I was in a lot of pain, and I couldn't stand. And I'm a little OCD since COVID, and I thought, I gotta lie down. And I thought, no, this is asphalt, I'm not lying down. So I lay down, and to make a long story short, I spent 9 more days. I spent 9 days in the hospital in Coronado. I broke my tibial plateau, tore 4 tendons in my left arm, and then activated a whole bunch of things that did not appear until I went to the IANDS conference in September. I have been in pain now for the last 1.5 years daily, and yet I realize, again, there's that intergenerational trauma. My mother was hit by a car while walking. Now, she wanted to leave the planet. She had found spirit and had it with Earth. And she had a really hard life living through the Holocaust. But I didn't die. So we never know what we sign up for here. But what's really important is to be thorough and to find a way to heal. Because if we heal, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, sexual, or intergenerational, some of us signed up for all 5. It's so important. I wish this could be heard by everyone, because we need joy on this planet. We need that place of resiliency where it's not just me, but it's how do I serve thee through my own experience, which will be different for each one of us. It's always unique. So I want to pause a moment. I want to tell you 4 amazing stories of my heroes who've been through extraordinary trauma and what they did. And then, shall I go ahead and tell you the story? Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay. So the first person I'm going to talk about is Viktor Frankl. Many of you may have heard of him. He wrote an extraordinary book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he, for people who don't know, he was in 3 concentration camps. And he said something really incredible in Man's Search for Meaning. He said that the reason people survive physically, like my stepfather, but there was no one in him, is because they needed to hold on to something creative or linking to their spirit. And the Nazis would not allow that. If they found anybody who was not assigned to play music, doing art or poetry or music, they were shot on the spot. So the Nazis were brilliant in being able to not kill bodies, but kill souls. And that's why the work is so important. Second person I want to talk about is her name is Alice Hertz Summers. This is an incredible documentary about her life called The Lady at Number 6. And it's something that I would teach with my educators. And she was the oldest living Holocaust survivor at 110. She was a world-class pianist in Czechoslovakia before the war happened. And when the Nazis arrested her and her family, they sent everybody off, but they put her in Theresienstadt, which was a feeder camp for all the camps. And it was a propaganda place. What they did for the Red Cross is they showcased art and dance and music and theater. And she got to play the piano. And she had an attitude of such grace. She was brilliant. There's a book about her called A Century of Wisdom. She played the piano for 100 years. And she had a spirit that was extraordinary. And it was really interesting because when she was at Teresa's Staff, now nobody got to stay there. And she was there with her son, who was 3 years old. And as you know, they killed everybody. They separated kiddos from their parents. They didn't care about any of that. One day, after she'd been playing a concert, she left, and one of the guards stopped her. And she knew not to look them in the eye. She looked down, and he said, "Frau Hertz." "Yes." "You will never be killed. You will never go to the camps." And she never did. She survived. Now, being after the war, 10 years was even worse, but what was extraordinary about her was her attitude. I'll tell you one more story about her. In the film, she ended up living in Israel and then London, where the film was taken, and German journalists would come to see her. And one of the things they would say is, "Don't you hate us? Don't you hate us? You let us come in." And she said, "I never, ever hate. I never hate." And she talks in the film that even in those atrocious times with no food and sickness and everybody being taken away in fear at the highest level of PTSD, she said, "I would laugh." So what a being. I also got to meet Edith Eva Enger, who was a ballet dancer. And she, at the age of 16, danced for Mengele. And he spared her from having all of those experiments done on her. I have a theme here. Finally, she became a psychiatrist. She lives in La Jolla. She wrote a book called The Choice. Beautiful lady. I took her out to lunch when I was back in Colorado in 2000, I think 18 or 19. The last person I want to talk about is a remarkable story. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name is Ben Nighthorse Campbell. And do you know who I'm talking about? So he was a Native American who was serving in World War II, and he was on a ship, and the Nazis captured the ship, and because he was doing different coding, they thought he was a spy. And so what they did is they burned the soles of his feet off with a cigarette. And he was shipped home, and for about, I don't know if it was a couple of decades, he lay in a veterans hospital, addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol, and a complete vegetable. Could not walk, couldn't do anything. So after, I think about 20 years, the Veterans Hospital said, "We can't do anything for him anymore," and they sent him back to his tribe. And his tribe, all the elders got together and they said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do." And they put him in the lake and they said to him, "You're either going to swim or you're going to drown." And when he was in the water, he was going down. Remember, he hadn't used his physical body at all for 20 years, just in bed. And it's like his life flashed before him. It wasn't an NDE. In 1 second, he was able to forgive the Nazis, forgive everything that had occurred in his life, and he began to swim. And he became a senator, a congressman in Washington. I want to quote two people. I love quotes, always have. So this is from Michael Bernard Beckwith, and he said, if you're going through hell, don't keep going. No, sorry. See, I don't have glasses. If you're going through hell, just keep going. Don't stop and pitch a tent. Go through hell until hell becomes heaven.
One more time.
If you're going through hell, just keep going. Don't stop and pitch a tent. Right? Go through hell until hell becomes heaven. And that really is the path of transformation. And this is from David Lynch. Mankind was not made to suffer. Bliss is our nature. So, for some reason, I decided in this lifetime to go very deeply into things. I had a dear friend who helped reparent me, who would say, you know, Francoise, you've always walked on rocks all your life. She goes, now it's time for you to walk on flowers and wear rocks. And part of that is having the courage for each one of us to heal. So what I designed was I worked through movement. One of the things that I talked about is that the beings that were really great brought things to consciousness, and that's part of it. So there is, in my book, I talk about a psychiatrist who did research on healing PTSD. And what he found is none of the methodologies that use the beta brainwave state, which is the talking state, which is using the left brain, which is the intellect, which is where we tend to be from about the age of 10 to 12 onward, work with trauma. Trauma is best healed by accessing the alpha brainwave state, and then we can go even deeper into theta and gamma, but alpha brainwave spot, the alpha brainwave seems to be that sweet spot. So what I created through my work called Movement for the Mind is we talk first about it. It may be conscious, it may be unconscious. And then I allow people, I might use words to guide them. I'll give you an example. There was a woman who came to me who had fibromyalgia in Palo Alto, and she was married to a doctor, and she was on a whole cocktail of meds. None of them were working. And she read an article about my work with PTSD and with sexual abuse, about with all the different things that I did in the Bay Area. And she called me and set up an appointment for a private appointment. She goes, I love dance. I haven't been able to dance in forever. And when she talked to me about what she'd been going through, is she had been experiencing for the past 10 years nothing but pain in her body. There was nothing else but pain. So I'm very intuitive, and I use my intuition in my work with others, and I just thought, I'm gonna put out everything about joy and play and fun and laughter, and that's all I did. I just put on music that might ignite that, and I just came out with words like joy and play and fun. So she did the session, and then she came out of it, and I said, how was that for you? And she went, I feel fantastic. I don't have any pain. I feel great. I'll see you next week. It's before text and emails. She called me on my landline and she said, Francoise, I've been pain-free since I've seen you. And I won't be coming back for an appointment because I don't need it, but I'll do any workshop you do. So was that a magical healing, or was that her ability to invoke the alpha brainwave state and go into a transmutation, her own alchemy? I also did work in the Veterans Hospital with both women who were assaulted in the armed forces and with men who have PTSD. And I worked one day with a woman. I had a grant through the federal government. And we did one session, and then we had a big meeting, the head psychiatrist and all the staff. And the psychiatrist looked at me and said, "You did it in one session, it takes us 2 years to accomplish." So why is that? And that's because we all have, it's the same thing, we all have within us that state of bliss and joy. But most of us are reacting to our own beliefs, our own thoughts, and to the world, that we can't access that. We know now scientifically, with Joe Dispenza's work and many other scientists, that when we go into meditation and go into deep states of meditation, we can reach that. And it's because we start with moving into the alpha brainwave state. So that's the work that I pioneered. It's really important because, remember I said, the second step to healing is to feel. And it's not about indulging the feelings, it's just being able to be like an actress on a stage or a dancer and express that which has been either repressed or shoved under, and let it go. It's like a child. If you take a screaming child and you put a muzzle on it, you think that they'll be quiet, but if you let them move through the tantrum, then all of a sudden they move on. So I do it in a way that just guides people to feel and then to transform that process. And really, because I'm in the middle of it now. I mean, as a dancer, I had a lot of injuries, but never broke a bone, and never kept me down. I remember I was teaching a yoga class at Sun Microsystem, and this gigantic dog was there, not on a leash, and knocked me down. And I went and taught my yoga class, and then I went and worked out, because I knew once I had my x-ray, they would tell me that I couldn't move. But I've never had what happened to me recently. So I just want to say that we're all in this together. We're all in this soup to help each other heal, to help each other transform. And in that way, we contribute to joy. We contribute to this planet. And we all really need to reach to that place. And again, it's like grief. Some people need one session. Some people need 50 sessions. Some people need a lifetime. Most of us need a lifetime to heal. But I just want to invite you all to move on that journey of transformation, to transform whatever trauma you've experienced in this lifetime, whether it's just coming to this planet, and have the courage to transmute it into joy. I will not take your questions, and also give you some information about different things that I do. So any questions? I have a book there, I have cards, I do readings, I do private sessions, I do yoga classes and meditation classes, and any place you think I might go, I'd love to share this work. Yes?
Just want to share a quote that you might like. Cynicism is cowardice.
interesting. It's interesting because I know so many people who are very, very sarcastic in a cynical way. And it's, if we just saw that everyone, we all come to this planet and experience certain amounts of suffering, some more than others. We probably, those of us who seem to have piled on the pile, I always say, I have this saying with my best friend who is now passed, who I talked to you about, that she reparented me. And she and I used to joke, and I don't know who made this up, but she and I used to say that we were both on a rocket ship and we were on our way to the planet Mirth. Then we saw this beautiful blue bauble in the sky, and we looked at each other, oh my goodness, what's that? So we asked the pilot, he said, well, that's Earth. And then she and I looked at each other and we said, Earth, Mirth, what's the difference? And then we landed on Earth and we went, big mistake. So yeah, cynicism often masks pain, In fact, bullies are all victims. It's just the flip side. Any other questions or comments? Very quiet group. Nothing?
I'm just
Yes.
curious about
Yes.
accessing the alpha brainwave. How do you do that? How can someone access the alpha?
Well, meditation is a great way to access the alpha brainwave state. And when I work with people in a one-on-one session, I put on music, I create a safe space. You can walk, you can not walk, it doesn't matter. You can do it because you use your imagination. And you just start to move, and that brings you. Thank you for asking that, because what I forgot to say is one of the reasons the work that I do is, and there are lots of it, is really important is because it accesses the alpha brainwave state and creativity. And creativity, as if you remember what I was talking about, the ones who were able to survive the Holocaust with their soul intact were creatives. They got to be creative even in that time. So creativity is so important. So art, music, dance. But what's different about the work that I do to get you in the alpha brainwave state is we use conscious themes, whether it's healing a physical body or healing a trauma, whatever it is, and use that, and then use creativity to move you into that alpha brainwave state, and that's where the transmutation occurs. But meditation, any of the arts. These are great. Yes, Jackie.
She was talking about, how you get into the alpha wave. You mentioned meditation. Are you also into the binaural beat kind of music that is repetitive on a certain megahertz to get people into this alpha wave?
I really have no knowledge in that area at all.
Okay.
I use music that will invoke certain states emotionally, and I use music that resonates to me. But someone said that what I needed to do to heal from the car accident is I needed to go to someone who does sound baths, and I went online and tried it, and I went, man, not feeling right for me. So, that's why there's not one path for everyone. There's a different path for everyone. And some merge. Yeah. So I don't know about
Okay, and in Boulder and lots of places, they have certain modalities where you're blindfolded to hear this beat, and then it can affect you so much more than if you're looking around the room and that kind of thing.
Well, it's because most of us have ADD living in the 21st century. We get distracted very easily. Yeah. questions about this? Yes,
It's
Susie.
just gonna mention real quick, I know in meditation, there's different things that you can do with your hands. And I've heard that, just the simple act of going, doing this with your hands during meditation, creates an alpha state. Have you heard that?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so what she was saying is that in meditation, there's certain mudras, they're called mudras, positions with your hands that can activate the alpha brainwave state. So the yogis knew about the power of sound, but they understood that the power of sound had to have a certain vibration. And one of the primordial sounds is Om. And they also understood the power of mudras. And so yes, but most of us are so Jud. Jud is another Sanskrit word, and what it means is sort of hardened, not sensitive to. So if you're highly sensitive, then yes, you can use mudras and things. But you know, what I loved about my yogic path is that a lot of these gifts that we're given happen spontaneously. It's like, you know, trusting the energy. Yeah. Yes.
Another way to get into an alpha state is to hug a child, preferably somebody under 3 years old, or to pet a dog,
Or a kitty.
Or
Yeah,
a kitty.
Of course. Listen
Or
to your cats first.
sit
There
and
are
talk
lots
to
of ways.
birds.
But what we do in this work is it's in the alpha brainwave state of creativity that the healing occurs because we're doing it consciously. We're working on it consciously. Yes.
Can we talk about forgiveness? You did mention it a little bit.
I talked about Ben Nighthorse Campbell, who did that. You know, I think that's not part of my talk. Forgiveness is an interesting subject. It's probably an entire talk on itself. I think that what most of us have to do is forgive ourselves. And as we forgive ourselves, we realize we're part of everything else. So, and forgiveness is, you know, for anybody who's gone through great abuse, you know, if you hold on to your anger, if you hold on to your revenge and hatred, that does poison you. But everybody has a different path. So it can take a long time, it might happen overnight, and I never try to judge someone else's path. So there's not universal way to healing. I know that there are stories of people remarkable people who've had relatives killed, murdered. And some people will hold on to it and hold on to it. And some people will be able to forgive and release right away. And you know, it's the whole story too, it's that sense of discrimination. Some things you just have to see through. You know, you have to walk through to make justice. But, you know, eventually, we're all dealing with our own suffering. And so if forgiveness helps you heal, then that's your step. Yes?
There was a woman who was on national TV, and she was going to forgive the killer of her son.
Right.
And she did that on national TV. And she did. And she said to him, "You were with my son during his final moments. Did he say anything about me?" And the killer said, "No." Well, I thought of a quote from Diamata, Self-Realization Fellowship. She says, "Ultimately, we would give anything for just a few moments with a person. Just to know one word, you can see their essence."
Again, it's whether you do it publicly or privately. I think all that kind of thing is very inward. And there is, the reason I always say this in all of my classes is that we are all part of this beautiful soup of oneness. And yet, we are all snowflakes. We're all unique. And I think that probably even happens that we retain. I know for many ND years, it's about really just going back to that oneness and how delicious that is and will be. But I think we retain some sense of that snowflake, of that uniqueness. So, lots of paths for lots of people. I want to thank you, unless you have any more questions about anything I talked about today, not about things I may not know about. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. So, any other questions or comments? I have all my informations there. You can come talk to me. I have a book. I will sign it for you.
Can I address the forgiveness part that you got a question about?
I'd rather not. I'd rather just keep the talk the way it is, but you two can talk together.
Okay.
Please, yes. I know you've been through a lot with that. Yeah, and that's why I mentioned that. For some people, it is the path of healing for them. Did you have another question about anything I talked about?
There's a quote I thought you might enjoy. It says, think of the universe as a giant puzzle with each of us unique and indispensable pieces.
Yes. All right, let me see if I have anything else that I want to share. I want to thank you all. I wanted to, yes.
You're saying that a lot of your work to deal with complex PTSD would be art and dance.
I work with the nonverbal state, so that's what gets you into the alpha brainwave state. So I use movement, I use different modalities for different people, depending upon their needs. But yes.
And so it's somatic, and I know that Candace Pert said your body is your subconscious mind, and I believe in her. And in Resiliency, I said that you only use 10% of your talking therapy,
Yes.
and the rest is subconscious and healing on all these alternative therapies. If you
So
could touch
I
on
know
those
Bruce
things.
Lipton, I love him. He asked me to send him my book, and I never did. And Candace Pert is in my book, and I quote her. She wrote The Molecules of Emotion, and what she found as a psychoneuroimmunologist was that emotions live in every cell of the body. So, and that's why I said trauma can happen from beliefs, from physical, from all these different ways. So, I'm going to thank you all for being here. Please take my products, please come talk to me, and I hope to see you all again. And may we all walk out with healing more trauma and activating more joy than we ever thought possible. Thank you.